Hello folks, it's me. Welcome to another episode. I'm going to make this a bit of a quicker one because this is an interesting but concise topic that I want to talk about quickly. So I was kind of thinking of how we all use guitar effects, and I think the word effects has come on to become this kind of almost derogatory thing in the world of guitar tone, whereby we all kind of associate the word effect with maybe being a bit of a gimmick or something that maybe detracts from the actual tone of the guitar. And that's why, I'm kind of a similar mindset sometimes, in that, using too many effects I do think can be detrimental to your tone. But I kind of like to use, personally, just speaking for myself, I use maybe 3 or 4 of what I would consider to be effects. And by that I mean, certain pedals that will add something to the shape of the guitar sound. So for me, that's really phasers and chorus pedals. Those are the 2 main modulation things I've talked about in the past. Those are my big two. Delay, I guess, can kind of count as an effect. I think pretty much every guitar player uses delay to some degree. But the 4th, and to me anyway, the most vital, without question, and the thing that I always have to use, is reverb. And I'm almost kind of hesitant to refer to reverb as an effect, at least in the way that I use it, because it's literally a naturally occurring thing, so therefore it's not really an effect, because it's just emulating space. But, I think there are certain ways that you can use reverb to pronounce an effect, if you see what I mean. So I want to kind of give a quick example of that. Whenever you hear me play guitar, whether it's on these videos or on the Peach videos or whatever, live, whatever it might be, I'm always using some form of reverb, just because without anything, it's such, to me anyway, a dry experience. So, for example, I was playing there some fairly sparse parts, but also some fairly busy guitar parts as well over that little chord progression, and the reverb is the glue that holds it all together and makes it all work in a seamless kind of way, at least I feel. Delay provides a similar job for some people, but for me, the more kind of rhythmic you play, delay can sometimes become an obstruction rather than a tool to actually help with the tone. So here's with no reverb at all, and I'll talk about what reverb we're using in a moment, but here's nothing. What you find there is there's a huge dynamic shift between the quieter notes and when I dig in hard. Now that works for some things, it really does, but I always like to have just a bit of reverb, and for the purpose of demonstration today, so that it's going to come across on the camera, I've cranked up the reverb from where I usually have it. So here's the effect of having a spring verb on the tone. Alright, hopefully that's going to come across on the camera, but it just adds this dimension to the sound and also this kind of unifying quality. It's almost like having a compressor without having a compressor. So it's just something that I've always wanted to have on my guitar tone, and particularly when it's cleaner like that. You know, I'm using the Dr. Z Remedy amp, which hopefully is in shot today, so you can see what I'm using. I'm using it pretty clean, and I'm using the reverb from the Strymon Flint, which I get a lot of questions from people asking about what reverb pedal should I use for this, you know, what's a good recommendation of a reverb pedal for this style or this style. The Strymon Flint is just the best reverb I've ever used. I don't think it'll ever come off my pedal board. I've talked about it, you know, in a million different ways in a million different videos, but Strymon Flint is the one for me because it's the most musical sound. And, you know, like I said, I turned it up a little bit more than what I usually have, but if I notch it down to kind of where I tend to have it, you can almost not really hear that it's there. But the key to a good reverb, I think, in a guitar amp is to notice when it's not there. You know what I mean? So there it is. And here's without it. And back in. So it's subtle, but I love it. And you know, something that I noticed that I really like as well is, you know, that's quite a dark reverb. But if you want to get a little bit more life out of your reverb, then I find rather than turning up the mix, you turn up the tone. And then it gets a little bit more character, it gets a little bit more life to it. So for example, I've got another reverb pedal here, which is one of my favourites as well, which is the, unfortunately, short-lived Boss Fender Reverb emulation. They released a slew of pedals a few years ago emulating Fender amps, which were questionable. But this one, which emulates a 63 reverb tank, sounds amazing. And you can tell I've set this much brighter. Now, because it's brighter, it doesn't have that same dynamic element. The reverb is always a little bit more present and a little bit more dramatic. But it's a cool option to have. And, you know, I just think having two different tones of reverb, I don't usually use two pedals, by the way, but, you know, just plug two in for the sake of demonstration today. Two different approaches you can have with a cleaner tone. But the thing that I love the most, and it never gets talked about really, because I think a lot of guitar players have become afraid of doing this, hear me out, is using it with a little bit of gain on the amp, without an effects loop, and with the reverb in the front end. Let me demonstrate. So I'm going to turn I'll turn the master down on the amp. I'm going to crank up the channel volume so it overdrives a bit. Let's see what we got. it's just a sound that I adore. I'm going to turn it up a little bit more. So that was with the Boss Reverb, which is brighter, as I said. But if I go back to the Strymon, which is warmer. Just such a great sound, and it's really key to getting some of those old school, blues rock tones. And references for me are always Gary Moore, kind of around his, I guess, later 90s, early noughties blues period, when he was using cranked Marshalls with a reverb pedal. Robin Ford as well, because he's been using his Dumble, I believe, with a reverb pedal in the front. And that amp is a little bit overdriven. You hear it on the some of his live recordings, especially when he's playing the 335. I just love that tone. It's so big and rich and warm, but then there's this reverb that provides all this life behind it. So maybe just something to consider. If you never really got on with reverb as an effect, which is to say, there's a million great reasons to use reverb as an effect in more of a kind of dramatic way. If you want to go down the plate reverb route or hall reverb, for example. But with Spring, to me anyway, it's the one thing I always kind of require in a guitar sound. Now this opens up a very good question, which I'll end this video with, which is, if you like reverb so much, why don't you just play amps with reverb on board? And as you can tell from all these amps, my kind of go-to is Brit style amps, which don't usually have reverb on board. And actually, I kind of like it that way. I do, since getting the Mesa Fillmore, which does have reverb on board, that is a nice approach to have. It's nice just to have it all built in and you don't have to worry about it. You can just dial it into taste and you're ready to go. But the reason I like having pedals so much is with an amp without reverb, you get a much purer, more direct sound. That's why these British amps, I think, are voiced the way they are. Part of the magic is that there is no reverb. It's such a direct, punchy sound. If I go back to just the complete dry tone, you just don't get that from an amp that has reverb on board. Whereas when you put the pedal on, it just sort of sits on top of the amp. It allows the amp to still do its thing, and to me it just doesn't become as embedded in the tone of the amp. That's either a good thing sometimes or a bad thing. It depends on your preference, but that's kind of why I like to do it that way. That's why I like amps that don't have reverb most of the time, and to use a good pedal. But I think the point of this video is just to say, just try using reverb more, because I think it's missing from a lot of great guitar sounds these days. There's always, on recordings and stuff like that, you've always got studio verb, but I just love the sound of reverb, and I do think it's underused, sadly. But I'm keen to know in the comments who you think is maybe the best user in the guitar realm of reverb of all time. There's loads of different suggestions for answers to that question, I'm sure. But yeah, I just love reverb. So crank up the Spring Reverb if you haven't tried it already. You'll probably find it adds a new element to your playing. Then again, maybe it won't work for you, but that's what makes guitar playing so cool. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about reverb. I hope you've enjoyed this little episode. Make sure you leave a like and comment down below with your thoughts. Also, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed to the channel already, then please do me a favour and hit the subscribe button. It would really help me out. Anyway, take care of yourselves, folks, and until next time, I will see you soon. That didn't make sense, but goodbye.